Good morning, West Creek Eagles.
I'm Renaya.
I'm Sitton.
And I'm Zakoya.
Today is February 22nd, 2018. Now let's cut to the lunch and breakfast menu.
Today for lunch we're having beefy cheeseburger steak, crunchy fish fillet sandwich, bento box, turkey pepperoni pizza, smile fries, wash corn, apple slices, bananas, Texas toast, 1% low-fat white milk, or chocolate.
Tomorrow for breakfast we'll have strawberry banana yogurt, fruit punch, juice, diced pear fruit cup, chocolate milk, 1% low-fat white milk or chocolate.
No, just say white milk because it already had chocolate milk at the top.
Educate yourself of Africa. To liberate yourself, Africa. Keep your heads up high. No more will we cry.
Madam C.J. Walker was born Sarah Breedlove in 1867 on a plantation in Delta, Louisiana, where her parents had been slaves before the Civil War. And her early life was really bleak. By the time she was 7 years old, both parents had died. She got married at 14, she said, to get a home of her own because she was being abused by a cruel brother-in-law, as she described him. She became a mother at 17 and a widow at 20. Necessity is always the mother of invention, and Madam C.J. Walker was losing her hair. There was no big line of hair care products for black women or white women at the time. People usually used home remedies. She eventually came up with her own formula, and the real secret was not the product itself, but it was washing her hair more often and applying an ointment that contained sulfur. And this was really pretty revolutionary at the time. You think about it, there was no penicillin, there was no aspirin. Skin care, scalp care was something that was really neglected. People didn't bathe very often. They washed their hair even less often, sometimes not at all during the winter. And as a result, a lot of people were going bald. They had really horrible scalp disease. Sarah Breedlove, who later became Madam C.J. Walker, was one of those women. And by developing this system, essentially, her scalp became healthy, her hair began to grow back. She developed a hair care product line, and then she trained thousands of other women who began to buy and sell her products. And by the time she moved to Harlem in 1916, she was one of the wealthiest and most successful African-American entrepreneurs in the country.
Stephanie Wilson, Joan Higginbottom, Yvonne Kagel, all influenced, all inspired by one woman. This woman goes by the name of Dr. Mae Jemison.
Mae Jemison, an inspiration from the stars.
Never be limited by other people's limited imaginations, by Mae Jemison.
Mae Jemison was born on October 17, 1956, in Decatur, Alabama.
At age 16, Mae Jemison attended Stanford University on a scholarship to study chemical engineering and African American studies. Jemison then graduated college in 1977. Jemison applied to and later discovered she was accepted to Cornell Medical School, where she pursued her career as a doctor and earned her medical degree.
I grew up in the 60s. I lived on the south side of Chicago, and I was a young girl who loved to stare up at the stars. I imagined myself going there. I studied all the things about the Apollo program. I knew what mission was going to take place when, what it was supposed to accomplish. I decided to go to medical school because I wanted to do something called biomedical engineering. While I was in medical school, I had the opportunity to go and work in a Cambodian refugee camp. I went on to study group in Cuba. I worked with the flying doctors in East Africa. But I still wanted to go into space, so I applied. I picked up the phone. I called down to Johnson Space Center. I said, I would like an application to be an astronaut. They didn't laugh. I turned in the application. There may be a certain naivete when I say, when I applied to the astronaut program, I didn't even think about the fact of whether I would be the first African-American woman in space or anything like that. It didn't even cross my, I wanted to go into space. I couldn't have cared if there had been 1,000 people in space before me or whether there had been none. I wanted to go.
On September 12, 1992, at 10:23 a.m., Mae Jemison, along with the crew of mission STS-47, traveled into space on board the Endeavour space shuttle. They flew out of Kennedy Space Center in Florida on runway 33 off of Launchpad 39B. Out of all 7 astronauts aboard mission STS-47, 4, including Mae Jemison, were taking their first trip into space.
Mission STS-47 aboard the Endeavour lasted 7 days, 22 hours, 30 minutes, and 23 seconds.
CLS is go for auto sequence start.
We have a go for auto sequence start, and the handoff has occurred, which puts the space shuttle on its own power. T-minus 17 seconds. We're coming up on a go for main engine start.
10. CLS is go for main engine start.
We have main engine start. 2, 1. Solid rocket ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of Endeavour on America's 50th space shuttle flight.
The purpose of mission STS-47 was to experiment on material and life sciences in minimal gravity areas, such as space. The environment in which the crew tested in was called Space Lab J. The way they ran the experiments was by separating into 2 teams, the red team and the blue team. Every minute of every hour of every day, at least one of the crew members were experimenting on the test subjects.
Live tadpoles that were brought back that were actually conceived and born in space. The experiment went very well. The results now, the investigators are out at Ames Research Center working busily on things, but very generally, the gross appearance of the tadpoles that were conceived in 0G looked very normal. They seemed very normal. So it was a good experiment. One of the things we also wanted to look at was what was the behavior? Was there a problem with their tadpoles' interpretation of what goes on in 0G? Can they swim normally? So we actually took up tadpoles that were hatched here on the ground and watched their swimming behavior. Some of the things it seemed like as if they had a difficult time figuring out which way to swim, as you can see, so they swam in circles. But we're able to bring tadpoles back down and also observe their behavior.
TVC2 on. Now we've got TVC1 and we see Mae at the workbench.
Okay, copy.
Yeah, Mae, we're looking right over your shoulder and we have a good view of the IV pump. And Mae, Jerry requested if you've got time to get a 35mm shot of that bag.
Oh, tell Jerry I have lots of 35mm shots of this bag.
He was impressed.
In Space Lab J, 44 items were tested on. Some of these test subjects included members of the crew, Japanese koi fish, cultured animal cells, plant cells, chicken embryos, fruit flies, fungi, plant seeds, frogs, and frog eggs. During mission STS-47, the crew studied the formation of protein crystal growth. Crystals were grown using specialized furnaces. The formed crystals were then exchanged back to Earth for further observation to better understand the crystal formation and growth, which will help duplicate the crystals as similar as possible on Earth.
Conductors of energy were also observed in an attempt to try to improve the quality of electronic components. Furthermore, due to the anti-gravity in space, many types of ingredients used to form glass were suspended, combined, and melted together using sound waves. On mission STS-47, many experiments examined the physiology of living organisms. Other experiments on the mission included how gravity affects the development of animals, such as the experiment Effects of Weightlessness on the Development of Amphibian Eggs Fertilized in Space.
Science rack, and we went in there, and it was a fairly simple thing to fix once we took the insulation away. It was similar to just fixing a leaky faucet at home, but it kept the loop intact, and we were able to continue with furnaces such as this, which is the image mirror furnace. It was one of the more funnest projects to work on orbit because it was rather interactive. You had to establish a melt zone. In this particular scene, we're putting a quartz tube around the sample, and then once we got the image mirror closed, we went ahead and brought the samples together, and we bring them together so that the focus of there's a light bulb in the back and also one the focus of the energy is on the gap between the two samples. This was one of them that we did. We did two other experiments in the image mirror furnace. One of them was a glass cube experiment. This glass cube, the objective was to turn it into a glass sphere and do some measurements.
Mae Jemison helped bring back data from space regarding live cells and interactions in microgravity locations. When back from space, Jemison, along with the rest of the crew from mission STS-47, exchanged valuable information discovered in space with NASA. These reports were consulted with the discoveries of animal behavior within cells in non-gravitational areas. The explorations involved structures on different substances they tested, such as protein. Experimental samples of liquid measured in milliliters were also given in to NASA to experiment on. This helps scientists create improved versions of medicine and new synthetic products.
Let's get it. I tell all my kids, go rake it up. Break it down. Be college bound. Them A's you rake it up. I said to rake it up. Them A's you rake it up. Go out and rake it up. I said all my kids, go